So today I'm going to go through a set of scriptures like I did in another recent video and just show you how we must obey God and that it's implicitly expected. I'm switching over to the scriptures that I've got in front of me. There we go. All right, good. So I want to read these scriptures one by one and talk about them so that you can see with a broad sweep how all across the New Testament it's expected that we obey God, that it's part of belief. It's not something separate from belief. That's why James could say faith without deeds is dead, or belief without action is dead, right? Even more accurately, persuasion, because faith, belief, persuasion, that's all the same word. And what it literally means is persuasion. And that word for deeds or works is literally action. So persuasion without action is dead. It's not true persuasion. It's useless and empty. It's actually hypocrisy. And that's what I want to focus on today is hypocrisy. So here we go. And the first one I actually translated, and I have this sense when I read one of the verses that there's a need to translate it. And when I get in, it absolutely has to be retranslated. So the Lord is leading me in this. And 1 Peter 2:16 is no exception to that. So here it goes. 1 Peter 2:16, the King James says, live as free people, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as God's slaves. The translation from the Greek, a literal translation, as unrestrained, and not as holding a covering from the evil, but unrestrained as a slave of God. Okay, the verb live isn't there at all. It doesn't exist there. Okay, so they completely fabricated that. And it doesn't mean free, it means unrestrained. And we're unrestrained because we are doing what is right. When you do what is right, you're unrestrained. You're not under law. You're only under law when you sin. And if you have been saved and you sin, you put yourself under law again. But if you've been saved, why are you putting yourself under law again? Meaning, why are you sinning? You are not under law, but under grace, if grace has indeed freed you from sin. But if you go back and start sinning again, then you have to ask yourself, have I really been freed by grace? Because I keep putting myself back under the law. The law is for the unlawful people. People who break the law. The law is there for people who break the law. Those who do not break the law are not under the law. The law doesn't have anything to say about people who don't break it. The law only has to say about people who break the law. So when it says as unrestrained, it means that you're unrestrained by law because you haven't broken it. As long as you walk in righteousness, you are unrestrained. It says as unrestrained and not as holding a covering from the evil. So trying to cover up the fact that you're evil. Pretend like you're unrestrained by the law. But when you commit evil, you are restrained by law. But unrestrained as a slave of God. When you are a slave of God, you are unrestrained because when you do what God says, you do not sin. That's how it works. Luke 6:46, and why call ye me Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? In other words, if you're not going to do what I say, don't call me Lord. That's what it says. And why call me Lord, Lord, and not do the things which I say? Either do the things which I say or stop calling me Lord. That's what I've been saying throughout my videos. Either start obeying or stop calling yourself a Christian. Mark 7:6. He answered and said unto them, well hath Isaiah prophesied, that's Isaiah, by the way, prophesied of you hypocrites. As it is written, this people honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. We hear heart and we think, oh, they're emotions. No, this is about action. They're not obeying him. They honor with their lips, but their heart that motivates their actions is far from him. And so with Christians today, you hear them honor him with their lips, and they believe in their imagination. But that imagination is futile because there are no actions to back it up. Their hearts are far from him. Now Romans, here we go. We're going to look at two sets of verses here, 3 and 4 and 10 and 11. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to every one that believeth. Now, you look at that and you go, wow, what do I make of this, right? It means that I'm not supposed to establish my own righteousness, so I can't do what's right. No, it's not talking about that. This is the apostate church message that you're getting into there. And it clarifies it when it says, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to every one that believeth. Because when you believe in Christ, you truly do what he says. When you do what he says, you're doing what is right. It's through Christ. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, meaning that they are doing what they think they should do, what they think is right. But when you meet with the Father, then you know his righteousness for you to do. You're not ignorant of it. When you're ignorant of God's righteousness, you're ignorant of what he wants you in particular to do right now, right here, right this day. When you're ignorant of that, then you go about to establish your own righteousness. See, it's about who are you taking your marching orders from each day. If you don't meet with him, you're ignorant of his righteousness for your life, for you. And then what are you doing? Well, you're going about trying to figure out what's right and what's not and do it. And you're doing it based on yourself, your own authority. And who is the authority in the beginning of all things that were created? The Word. John 1. The Gospel of John. In arche in hologos, kai logos din proston theon, kai theos in hologos. In the beginning and authority, that word arche. In arche in hologos, logos is word, right? In arche. Arche is beginning and authority both at the same time. We don't have words like that where it means the same together where you can't separate them. So arche is beginning and authority. The authority over your life is the word spoken from the Father. That word is Jesus. When you meet with the Father and he speaks to you a word, he is speaking Jesus to you. And if you do not obey, not only do you not obey the Father, but you do not obey the Son. So, when it says you're going about establishing your own righteousness, it's not about you doing what's right and it's always wrong. That's what the apostate church wants you to believe. That even if God tells you what to do and you do it, it's still wrong. No, absolutely not. It's called good works in Ephesians 2:10, the verse they want to truncate off every time they refer to that passage. They go 2:8 through 9, 2:8 through 9, 2:8 through 9. Stop just vomiting out what you hear from other men. Throw 10 on there because it's absolutely relevant to keeping that from becoming a heresy. Not all works are evil. Not all works create boasting in man. Because there are works from God called good works because God alone is good. But you can't discover what those are without meeting with God. Because they're particular. It says that you're fitted to. You're custom fitted to walk about in. Well, how can you know those custom fitted works that are called good works that are good because they're from God unless you meet with God? Which means if you don't, you're ignorant of God's righteousness for your life. Go on to verse 10. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness. Right there. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness. But their heart is far from me. That was a previous passage we just looked at in Mark 7:6. But their heart is far from me. And I said it has to do with actual action. And here you see right here, for with the heart man believeth unto righteousness. Meaning that he believeth in such a way that he does what's right from the Father. not in ignorance of the Father's righteousness for him. And with mouth confession is made unto salvation. For the scripture saith, whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. Don't be fooled into thinking again that believe means some sort of imagination. Separated from action. It's not. Absolutely not. Because faith without action is dead. Believing without action is dead. Persuasion without action is dead. Titus 1:14 and 16. Not giving heed to Jewish fables and commandments of men that turn from the truth. That doesn't mean all commandments. That means commandments that were invented by men, that God did not give. It doesn't mean all commandments. Commandments do not turn you from the truth. And that's what this apostate church has bought into. They've reduced everything so far down, they've obliterated every little detail. Even if there's critical detail that helps them to distinguish between commandments of men and commandments of God. They're not the same thing. And there's no condemnation of commandments in the Bible, of commandments in general, but commandments from men, yes, that turn from the truth. 16, they profess that they know God, but in works they deny them. There's actions again. They profess that they know God, but in actions they deny him, being abominable and disobedient. Disobedient. And unto every good work reprobate. They do not know what good works are, and they reject good works completely. They do not believe that obedience or good works is necessary to be saved. They profess to know God, but in works they deny him. They deny him in works, in actions, being abominable and disobedient. Disobedient. And unto every good work reprobate. Matthew 23:27 through 28. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. A hypocrite is someone who says something but doesn't do it. That's exactly what the apostate church preaches as the gospel, that I can believe something and say it, but I don't have to do it. I don't have to obey. It says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye are like unto white sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness. Even so ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within ye are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. That word iniquity means lawlessness. Literally, lawlessness. Hypocrisy and lawlessness, they go hand in hand. The person who says that I am not under law, I do not have to obey commandments from God to be saved. I do not have to obey. I do not have to obey. I do not have to obey. When they say that, you know that they're preaching from the devil, not from the Father. They're hypocrites. They say with their mouth what they believe, but they refuse to obey it. And they'll even teach that you don't have to obey it. Don't listen to them. Run far away from them. They're not preaching the gospel. And I'm showing you a broad sweep across the New Testament. And it's not even, sometimes it's one or two verses, but not all the time. Sometimes it's even 4, 5, 6 verses all in a row. And if you read the context, it all supports it as well. I'm just getting down to the focus of it. James, or Jacob, because the book's really called Jacob. If you've watched my videos, you've learned that, or gone to our website, therootedword.com, where the translation is being done. The first book that's completed is the book of Jacob, which we call the book of James in English, but every other language in the world translates it as Jacob because his name is literally Jacob. It was our anti-Semitism at the time of King James, which transformed it to James. Jacob 1:22 through 23. Furthermore, become someone who actually does what the word says. Do not become only listeners, purposely avoiding any evaluation of how you're doing, thinking you can cheat God. This is the rooted word. This is the rooted word translation, literal translation. Thinking you can cheat God by not doing what the word says. Because when there is a listener of the word who does not also actively do what it says, he is very much like a man who completely understands what he actually looks like in person based on his appearance in the mirror. Matthew 7:21 through 23. This is also the rooted word. Not everyone saying to me, Lord, Lord, will come into the kingdom of the heavens, but the one doing the will of my Father who is in heavens. The one doing the will of my Father who is in the heavens. Not saying, Lord, Lord, but doing the will of my Father who is in heaven will not enter the kingdom unless they do. Now tell me that doing has nothing to do with our salvation. Jesus says exactly right here that it does have to do with our salvation, and that many Christians will call him Lord and not do the will of his Father in heaven, and will not enter into the kingdom of the heavens. You cannot get around this. Many will utter to me in that one day, Lord, Lord, do we not in your name prophesy, and in your name throw out demons, who distribute fortunes, and in your name do many amazing things? And at that time I will assent to covenant to them that not even at any time do I know you. Go away off from me, you toilers of the lawlessness. That's why I say, if you're not going to obey, stop calling yourself a Christian, because Jesus doesn't know you. If you refuse to obey, stop calling yourself a Christian. Go away. Matthew 15:7 through 9. Ye hypocrites, this is King James, ye hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. In vain, in desolation, that means. In desolation they do worship me. They worship me, but without result, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Their heart is far from him. They do not do what he says. 2 Timothy 3:1 through 5. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers. I'll say it again, false accusers. Incontinent, not able to control themselves. They call it addiction nowadays. So addicted, incontinent, unable to control themselves. Fierce. So when you sin and you also can't stop the sinning, you're committing two sins because you're also incontinent. Fierce, whether outwardly fierce or secretly fierce. Despisers of those that are good. You despise those that are doing good. Hear me? You despise those who are doing good. Traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure, more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. They have an outward appearance where they're putting a presentation on of godliness, but they deny the power of it. They cannot do what's right. They cannot obey. From such turn away. Then back to James, book of Jacob. This is the broader passage because those verses I read are in the middle of this. So I'm going to read the whole thing here. 1:21 through 26. Focus on this, get rid of all filth in yourselves, and throw away every intention you have to harm others by piercing. With a mild nature, receive and accept the authority of the word yourself, the word which was breathed into you. It has the power to save your voluntary breaths of life, your soul. Furthermore, become someone who actually does what the word says. Do not become only listeners, purposely avoiding any evaluation of how you're doing, thinking you can cheat God. Because when there is a listener of the word who does not also actively do what it says, he is very much like a man who completely understands what he actually looks like in person, based on his appearance in the mirror. He actually did completely understand what kind of person he was. But after he left, he purposely forced himself to hide this information from his own mind in secret. Instead, bowed down in reverence, beside the completed law, which gives true liberty to do what you finally should. Not liberty to do whatever you want. It says, which gives true liberty to do what you finally should, not what you could get away with. And stay beside it all the time, doing the work. And stop forcing yourself to secretly hide from your own mind who you really are. This is how you will truly be supremely blessed, but only in your doing. You'll only be supremely blessed in your doing. If any one of you thinks you are demonstrating the fear of God, but you're not controlling your tongue in a way similar to controlling it by lowering it into a chasm where you are in control of it rather than it of you, if you are not doing this, then you are lying to your heart. And this chews up the possibility of any demonstration of the fear of God. Luke 6:37 through 42, judge not, and ye shall not be judged. Condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned. Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, and shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye met withal, it shall be measured to you again. And he spake a parable unto them, can the blind lead the blind? Shall they not both fall into the ditch? The disciple is not above his master, but every one that is perfect shall be as his master. Notice that. It's not saying the master alone is perfect. It says the disciple is not above his master, so will never be above Jesus. But every one that is perfect shall be as his master, meaning it is possible to be perfect as Jesus is perfect. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but perceivest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Either how canst thou say to thy brother, Brother, let me pull out the mote that is in thy eye, when thou thyself beholdest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, cast out first the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to pull out the mote that is in thy brother's eye. It's a hypocrite. The hypocrite wants to try to help other people, but they've never helped themselves. They walk around with sin in their life, and they've never been able to overcome sin, and yet they're going around behaving like they're teachers of the Scriptures. Like they're teachers of the Scriptures. They don't understand that their own salvation is in jeopardy. And that's the first and foremost, most important thing, is to make sure that you're not going to be damned because you didn't take care of this beam that's in your own eye first. You didn't start obeying God. You're a hypocrite, as he calls them. Matthew 7:1 through 6. Judge not that ye be not judged, for with that judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye met, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye? It's the same parallel passage. But considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, Let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye? You hypocrite! First cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs. Neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you. Why is he saying this? Because those men who do not obey God are like dogs and swine. They refuse to come out of the mud. They trample under their feet the things which are precious, pearls. The dogs, they have no regard for what it is. They just chew it and tear it and whatever. This is the people who preach the apostate gospel. Do not give to them the precious pearls. Finally, 1 John 2, 3 through 6. We know that we have come to know him. This is extremely important and very clear. We know that we have come to know him if we keep his commands. If you do not keep his commands, then you do not know him. That's what it says. We know that we have come to know him if we keep his commands. Whoever says, I know him, but does not do what he commands is a what? A liar. Whoever says, I know him, oh, I know God, but does not do what he commands is a liar. And the truth is not in that person. Not only do they not know the truth, but it's not in them. Because it would work itself out in actions. Remember, the heart works itself out in actions. We just saw that in at least 2 of the passages. Verse 5, but if anyone obeys his word, if anyone obeys his word, love for God is truly made complete in them. But if anyone obeys his word, love for God is truly made complete in them. So, if they do not obey his word, then the love for God is not actually made complete in them. This is how we know we are in him. This is how we know we are in him. Let me say it again. This is how we know that we are in him. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. This is how we know we are in him. If you remain in me and I remain in you, right? How are you going to be saved if you do not remain in Christ and he remain in you? And yet how will that happen if you do not live as Jesus did? This is how we know we are in him. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. It's actions. If you do not live as Jesus did, if you do not obey the Father and his specific commandments to you each day, you will not be saved. You will not be saved. May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart. Remember to subscribe down below and like the video and share it on your Facebook and other social media. And then make a comment, whether a question or a comment. We read all of them, and we try to respond to all. Get on over to our website, The Rooted Word, and start reading the translation and also the articles we've posted. It's at therootedword.com, therootedword.com. And may the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart.